So we will have a set of panelists. Some of them are already in the room. I think others are still making their way, but we've met them throughout this conference. At the same time as WASAG is taking place, WASAG being a partnership which is hosted by the Food and Agriculture Organization, for which my colleague Rosaida and myself work, and we manage the WASAG partnership. Within its own business, FAO has a strategic plan for 2022-2031, which has 4 Bs, the 4 betas. And if I could ask that the presentation is projected, the first one. So the 4 betas are about better environment, better production, better nutrition, and better life. Those are the 4 betas that drive the FAO strategic framework. And within, for each one of them, the FAO has decided to accelerate them through what we call value-adding impact areas. So one of those value-adding impact areas is called AWSAME. We always try to come up with acronyms, but basically AWSAME stands for Addressing Water Scarcity in Agriculture and the Environment. The E stands for the environment. And it falls under the better environment, BE. So yesterday, those who participated in the breakfast where the president of the World Water Council spoke, he insisted about the need to take the environment into account in the water conversation. And we could not agree better, because this is the justification of this initiative, and making it to fall actually under one of those 4 Bs, the better environment. I mean, it could have been under better production as well, but we felt it's better there under better environment. So there is no need to explain where we are going with the population world growing, with the water scarcity, with agriculture being the biggest water user for freshwater withdrawals. And we know that there are a lot of things that are going on. WASAG, this is a WASAG coordinated event. Within FAO, we have got the inter-regional technical platform on water scarcity in agriculture, which is managed by Cairo. And then you have regional initiatives, not only the one in Cairo. Cairo had, our office in Cairo had a big regional initiative on water scarcity. Our office in Bangkok has got one, and many countries also have their own initiatives. And we do receive many, many requests from countries. In fact, WASAG reports to the Committee of Agriculture of FAO, and every time when they meet, since WASAG was established, they always ask WASAG to respond to country needs. So we see this AWSAME as an opportunity to provide a kind of an umbrella, integrated and multidisciplinary set of interventions, from practices to field level, to enhance policies at regional and global level, as well as with our occurring partnerships, such as WASAG. So the value addition of AWSAME to WASAG is first the focus on environment. The second is the opportunity to coordinate all these initiatives. And when I present the last slide, I'll show you where we think we should go. So, yeah, those are the objectives of AWSAME. I think you can read them. It's not really necessary to spell them out. And these are our expected results. We want to have data and information. We need to influence policy and investments. We need to provide knowledge to facilitate the uptake through communities of practices. This is what we're already doing somehow through WASAG. And then we need to influence at global and strategic level and bring on board cooperation. So where are we right now? So we needed to start somewhere. And because of the focus on environment, yesterday we were having a very interesting discussion on drought-resilient crops. So we are conducting a study on identifying at global level drought-resilient and nutritious crops. The hope is that through this intervention, at least we can address also the biodiversity component, which is not always mentioned explicitly. And we hope that having identified such crops, we will then consult with countries, and then if they agree that those crops have got potential for them, then we can see how to upscale them. Then within FAO and outside FAO, there are a lot of initiatives going on that support water scarcity. For example, you know, Daniel, that you work with my colleague Maher on droughts. We have a global soil partnership with whom we cooperate on soil salinity and so forth. So we are doing this compendium internally to get all this information and put it in one house where it can be accessible. Then there is the International Year of Millets, which is going on, and Rosaeda is on the working group of that committee. And then we have got in FAO one initiative, it's called One Country, One Priority Product, OCOP. And we think that, or we expect that some of those countries might identify a crop that could be an indigenous crop. And if this is the case, then we establish synergies with them in order to integrate that into our initiative. Because of the International Year of Millets, we expect that some of those countries will, in fact, adopt millets or leguminous. And if there is scope for establishing synergies, then we'll proceed. Then next week in FAO, there will be a meeting about the vision for adapted crops and soils. This is a United States-led initiative, which also is looking at indigenous crops. So we are watching out. We don't have yet any collaboration. Incidentally, one of our panelists will come a bit later, Tafadzwa from IMI. That's his area of expertise. And in networking here, he confirmed that he will be in Rome next week. So this is our entry point also to make sure that we see what is happening and establish those synergies. We don't have yet a website for AWSAME. It is being designed. So what we are proposing, actually, it's a repository. It's still under discussion. I presented the idea to my director, Mr. Li Fengli, that many of you have met, and we still have to discuss it internally. But yeah, when we react throughout this session, I will appreciate if some of you can also say what they think about this repository, where it will be like a one-stop shop where everyone can come and get information on water scarcity in agriculture. I mean, the initiative that was launched in Morocco, not in Morocco, but in Dakar on droughts, the drought portal that we have within FAO, and any other initiative that is happening, any products that are being developed there, any success stories, opportunities for exchange visits. We want to house all those initiatives there and make sure that we all work together. There is a strategic value in that, in breaking the natural silos that we tend to build to protect our territories. That happens internally, but it also happens between organizations. So we believe that this umbrella will be the way to go, that if, for example, Cape Verde or Sri Lanka or Mexico are facing a situation and they think that they want to find a solution, they can go there and knock at that door. There will always be somebody to be able to respond, and they can be directed to where a solution could be found, and the collaboration can be initiated. Yesterday we were talking about with Jennifer, and she also spoke about the initiative that you have on drought-resilient crops in Denver. That can be put there very easily. Micah from the USDA did his PhD on indigenous crops. In fact, it was lentils. And he was telling our colleague from IMI that if he goes on the website, he will definitely find his PhD, which should add value to that initiative. So it's those kind of information that we want to be able to provide under AWSAME. So how is it operating? The beauty of it is that it's managed by ourselves at WASAG, so there is no risk for duplication. There's only a risk for maximizing the opportunities for synergies. We will consult with countries, specifically for the drought-resilient crops, but each initiative that we will start, we will consult with countries and get their buy-in. And this will lead me to the next topic, the next topic of our session here. So there will be an assembly of WASAG. The first assembly of WASAG is a follow-up to the decision that we took in Praia Capo Verde. And again, I'll go back also to the statement that was made by the president of the World Water Council of the need to mobilize more than ever political will. Right now in WASAG, we have 8 countries that are declared partners of WASAG through some of their institutions. We have countries that are friends of WASAG, but there is a missed opportunity. In the prior declaration, we said that water scarcity will only get worse with time. So rather than sitting there and being caught by surprise, it is necessary to be proactive. And who will have the power to make the decision to support our technical proposals? It's only the countries. So there will be a first assembly of the member states of FAO we are proposing April, and then we will present the prior commitments. We will present AWSAME, we'll present everything that we are offering here, and then we can take it forward. So I stop there. I will not, I think, open this presentation for discussions. What we are going to have now, it's a video. It's an 11-minute video. It replaces the keynote speech that the Secretary of State of Capo Verde, Mr. Miguel Angelo Damura, was supposed to make here because they were the host of the forum, but he couldn't make it. So without further ado, I invite you to enjoy that video. And if you don't see yourself and you are in Praia, sorry. Please proceed. Welcome to this second WASAG International Forum on Water Scarcity in Agriculture here in Praia, Capo Verde. 3 days of intensive engagement, networking, discussion, exchange of information, reaching consensus to find solutions to water scarcity in agriculture in an agreed way.
The second international forum of WASAG here in Praia, Cape Verde, have the theme of making agriculture resilient to climate change. And that complements the vision of WASAG to really have a food system that is secure and resilient to the impacts of climate change.
É o melhor espaço para sediar o Fórum do WASAG, como eu disse, pela nossa resiliência, por aquilo que Cabo Verde representa relativamente à luta e ao combate à aridez, à seca, e mesmo assim produz agricultura e quer produzir cada vez mais agricultura, e termos toda a abertura em partilhar, receber todas as contribuições científicas, académicas, de pesquisa, de investigação, para juntos melhorarmos o nosso desempenho.
The International Forum of the WASAG is the great opportunity that we can hear much more the solutions to the water scarcity from all the members, that we can learn from each other, and that we can be able to help to share those experiences and also share those solutions to other countries.
Principalmente a troca de experiências, a partilha de experiências com os vários países, os cientistas, as organizações que aqui estão presentes em Cabo Verde, e facilitando naturalmente a interação entre os técnicos, os cientistas cabo-verdianos e naturalmente aqueles que virão, estão aqui e que estão também online neste importante evento.
Cabo Verde is super well placed to be hosting this international event that FAO is supporting, and actually FAO, and this is what we also like as Switzerland, FAO is realizing that agriculture and water are linked in a systemic manner, and FAO is moving also we think in the right direction with this.
We wanted to bring water again to the main national agenda, but to the global agenda also we want to contribute a little bit on these purposes.
At FAO, data collection and dissemination is one of the core functions. For water data, we have Aquastat, which is the FAO's global information system on water and agriculture. And together with countries, we collect data and we disseminate the data at global level. We also support countries. We provide capacity development to help countries to have better information systems on water resources.
I think WASAG in the last 5 or 6 years has really brought a lot of the key partners working in water and agriculture, and really helped get a more coherent message around the importance of water and agriculture, and address specific issues, I think, in drought, in water and nutrition, in sustainable ag water use, but really get those messages to the decision makers and other relevant parties in water and agriculture.
WASAG is an FAO mechanism that should be put to the service of all its members. So it only makes sense for this work to continue and to develop even further its objectives if all members can really be part of it and contribute and profit from the wealth of knowledge WASAG and FAO has in the domain of water scarcity in agriculture.
La FAO a commencé à faire ça. Nous avons commencé à faire des forages en utilisant les techniques d'énergie solaire, avec les pompes solaires, avec les panneaux solaires. Et nous parvenons à assister nos communautés, surtout la communauté des femmes, à pouvoir avoir accès à l'eau en utilisant le système solaire. Et ils parviennent à cultiver toute l'année. Et ça, c'est très important. Je crois que c'est la seule façon de pouvoir juguler la faim dans cette région. S'ils parviennent à produire toute l'année, il y a moyen vraiment de juguler la faim.
Hi, happy to be here participating in the second WASAG forum. We have, ICADA has been part of the WASAG since its inception. We were one of the founding members of WASAG, and here we are trying to promote the issues that we face in the drylands of the world, the dryland agriculture session, because drylands are almost constituting 50% of the global agricultural landscape, and here water is the main limiting factor of crop production, and it's not just the supply of water, but the bridging the supply-demand gap. The water comes in short spell, and it's a lot of water during a short period of time, and then we have prolonged dry periods. So how do you bridge the supply-demand gap by extending the growing season, having techniques to store this water, make it available for the farmers? That's what we are trying to promote here.
In principle, I think countries need to be prepared for drought. It is coming intense, it is becoming more frequent, and countries need a policy that is based on principle of risk reduction. They have to become prepared. And this is what we are trying to do through WASAG. We have a number of partners. One last thing that I want to say is drought is not a sector, it is a connector. So countries need to work together, they can learn from each other, and this is what we are trying to promote. North-South complemented by South-South exchange of knowledge and experience is very important, and also collaboration among sectors. As I said, it is not a sector, it is a connector. So you need a national platform to work on drought.
Policy dialogue and policy coherence are extremely important and should be a priority at all levels of governance in whole-of-government approaches. Action and water-related finance must be accessible to all, including the most vulnerable communities, migrants, and displaced persons.
So we are adopting a call for action, and action is the keyword. And the Praia Call for Action now challenges the partners to walk the talk, to deliver. Yes, they've been delivering knowledge products, publications, webinars, but the next step is to be closer to the ground and to bring a change, to demonstrate those solutions that have transformed the water scarcity into an opportunity for sustainable development, for achieving food security, nutrition, and most importantly, the protection of our natural resource base, the environment. Just to give you an idea, can I ask those who were in Praia and who are in this room to stand up? Can we give them a hand? No. Praia, to travel, you can sit. Yeah. Reaching Praia is quite a mission. And the person who won the prize for having traveled the most is in this room. Please stand up. And yeah. Yes. And the person who won the prize for traveling the longest hours to be in this room, to be in Praia, is also here, if you can stand up. From Kigali in Rwanda. So I think for us, Rosaida and myself, managing WASAG, to be with you here, and then to be with you, having been with you 2 months before in Praia, just says that it's very important. I'm sure those who are in this video, Peter, Daniel, and Vinay, you are surprised maybe, but we did not plan this. It was just coincidental that we put it there and you are there. And those who are interviewed and who were not shown in the video, your interviews are going to be loaded on the WASAG website. So now we will go into looking at the prior commitment. It's a presentation. I'm not even going to read it. I will just go through it, maybe 1 minute per slide. And then those who are here, who are connected with the implementation of some of those actions, then can come one by one. You will come, you stand here on the podium, you talk, and then you take a seat. One of them is not yet here because it's another session that's Tafazwa from IMI. And then after you've said what you feel you need to say about the relevant prior commitment, and you can scroll through it backward and forward, then Rosaida then will facilitate a discussion with everybody here. And then we'll invite Peter McCormick, who I don't know if beyond Peter there's anyone else who was there when WASAG was established on the 20th of April 2017. Daniel, you were there? You were there also. So these are like the institutional memories of WASAG. Then both of you serve on the steering committee, but because Peter, you are our host here, we'll ask you to deliver the closing remarks after the panel discussion. So I'll just scroll through them without any comment. So now I'll invite Christopher Nell to come and say what he feels he needs to say in relation to any of these actions and anything else. I'm following the alphabetic order here of your institutions. Please, you can come here.
Yeah, it's the Praia event was a great opportunity to bring all the stakeholders together, or representatives of the stakeholders, and have that discussion that led up to these points that were shown, and the call for action, and things that we need to concentrate on. For the Water for Food Institute, a lot of these things are well within our mission and goals of water and food security, and producing more with less. And so we wholly support WASAG and its mission and these goals that have been identified. And key now is not to let the ball drop. Let's keep moving, right, and creating programs and actions that actually lead to some of these outcomes that we envision. I think that's about what I have to say. Oh.
Icarda, Vinay.
So yeah, my name is Vinay Nangia. I work for a CGIAR center called ICARDA, International Center for Agricultural Research in the dry areas. So we specialize in dryland agriculture, and within WASAG, I try to bring the voice of the people from the dry areas and the issues they face. And like the name implies, dry areas, water is the main limiting factor of crop production. Almost 50% of the area globally can be classified as dry areas, and almost 50% of the livestock is found in the dry areas. 85% of the smallholder farmers reside in the dry areas. So water is really precious. And when we talk about productivity, we don't talk about land productivity. We always talk about water productivity. How much did you gain per unit of drop of water that you consumed? And some of the things that you saw in the call for action reflect that, improving water productivity. But what people in dry areas are talking about is economic water productivity. How much money did I make per unit of water? And it's not just the yields, but what else could I have done with this water? Could I have grown a different crop? Could I have used the water differently? What technologies could I adopt? How could I bridge the demand-supply gap? And some of the things that are reflected in the points that came out of the prior declaration. Also, the people are trying to look into the future and make themselves climate smart, resilient to the future climatic shocks. And that's what they talk about, the climate smart agriculture, innovation. And it goes a long way trying to see underutilized crops or varieties that used to exist in the past that can be brought back and that can have nutritious value, require less energy, less water, and yet can be good for human consumption. So we are looking at the water, energy, food nexus as well, because a lot of energy goes into food production, and how much energy do you draw from consuming that food becomes really important. And how do you utilize green energy like the solar power drip irrigation, solar power desalination of water, agro-photovoltaic, so many things that can use green energy and still stretch that every last drop of water that you have available in the dry areas to be used beneficially. So those were some of the voices I brought to the WASAG forum, and they were reflected in the call for action. Thank you so much.
Marco Aceri from ICID.
So my name is Marco Aceri. I'm Vice President of ICID, International Commission on Irrigation and Drainage, and as Jean was recalling, ICID has been a funding partner since the very beginning of WASAG, since 2017. ICID commitment in this program from the very start has always been one of the most important for us. We are, of course, as we are based in several countries, having to deal with irrigation and drainage, we are very much committed on raising awareness at the political level, institutional level, talking with stakeholders. We are very much committed, of course, on tackling and introducing innovation, new solutions in order to increase water use efficiency. And of course, we are very much involved in capacity building, training, sharing of knowledge, of information by showcasing the most important recent advanced results obtained by research, by experimentation, and thus I could say our role is one of the most essential for having advance on and outputs on this, resolving this great issue. I was, having said this, in these 2 days, I think we had, allow me to say, 2 very important meetings or contributions. Bedford, Land O'Lakes, and yesterday, as Jean was recalling, Loïc Fouchon from World Water Council, and I think both were very significant. I mean, their contribution was very significant for what we are saying, what we are dealing with in these days, in this conference, and today. I fully agree that we need, what Loïc Fouchon was saying, we need to pay more respect to nature, to the environment, but I would say to nature. Because look, I think we are living a very strange, a curious paradox. One of the major stress factors on water resources use is the increase of population. We know that. And we know that the increase of rate of abstraction of water resources has been double in the last 20 years, double than the growing rate of population. So what we are living today is that we have an increasing rate of population, and we need to produce more food. And in order to produce more food, we need to have more water. But as we produce more food and we abstract more water, the population is going to increase. So it's very paradoxical. So what is the solution? I will just leave this suggestion. I think because we have to raise, and this is the other important aspect that Loïc Fouchon was raising, we have absolutely to increase at the political level awareness that we definitely need a shift in the paradigm of productive systems. Of course, is it natural to have this kind of intensive productive systems, such as in Italy, for instance? We have thousands and thousands of cattle, of cows, and they need also antibiotics and so on. And on the other hand, every year, as FAO always states, we have more than 30% of food waste. So I would just like to leave for the discussion or for you to go home. We need, I think, what is my commitment, what is our commitment? We need to raise political awareness that we must have the courage to ask for a shift in the paradigm of production. Otherwise, there is no way out. And this is my remark. Thank you.
Jennifer? Oh, sorry. Sorry, sorry, no, I have Jennifer from O. Yeah. Yes. I don't know your I'm following no, for institutions.
Oh, institution.
Yes.
Okay, I was trying to break the code there.
Then it will be Jenny.
At least you know you're up next. I'm one of the 2 variations on the theme of Jennifer you'll be hearing from. Jennifer Riley Chetwynd. I'm the co-director of the One World, One Water Center, based just next door in Denver, Colorado. This is a joint venture between Denver Botanic Gardens and Metropolitan State University of Denver. I think the greatest takeaway from this event, for me, has been Beth Ford and her observation that to tackle these challenges, we need to pair unlikely bedfellows. You need, for example, a governor from a conservative state, a governor from a more liberal state to come together to jointly work toward change. And I think that's what I took away from the WASAG convening and from the conversations we have with this group, because it is a broad mix of stakeholders from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, different sectors. And I think it's through that, it was specifically point 7 in the Praia commitments. Let's see, sensitizing, sharing knowledge, and supporting a proof of concept for projects that couple water management and food and nutrition and wash. It's all of those things. We can't speak about one in isolation, and I think that's the power of WASAG. So I look forward to discussing that further.
Then Jenny.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Jenny Barron, and I'm the co-lead of the WASAG working group, Water and Nutrition. Unfortunately, our lead, Claudia Ringler at IFPRI, couldn't be with us today. But we have tried to put forward a very short note. And the first thing is, of course, as we have discussed during these days, that there is no recipe to address complexity which we always face when we deal with water. And in the working group Water and Nutrition, we have created a community of dialogue and practice between researcher, academics, development agents, UN representatives, and so on, who are interested in trying to address this complexity to seek out synergies in action. And synergies in action here is about addressing SDG 6 on water, SDG 2 on food security, and SDG 3 on health and nutrition aspects, as Jennifer was referring. And in the backwater of UN Water Conference that some of you attended, it's sad to say that the community didn't come together with a very clear path forward around our water. And it was very clear that food and food systems were very far off the top agenda. So we think that there is a reason to keep dialoguing in this working group under the WASAG hosting, how we keep elevating water and nutrition on global as well as national and local agendas for seeking out the synergies in development. And one thing that is very important is that research is showing that water management, agriculture water management, and better productivity in smallholder farming systems especially doesn't necessarily improve household nutrition or household food diversity. And this is worrying because we do see that productivity can be increased, but we have to also translate that productivity increase to a better state of nutrition and food diversity for those producers. It can be done, but we need to work better on it. And the second thing that we think is important topic to talk about going forward is what does climate change actually do to our nutrition in our production? So we have databases on nutrition content for different food items, but what is the nutrition content in our produce when our crops are facing droughts, dry spells, and wet spells? And this we do not have very good hold on, and certainly not big global databases to help us project what happens when our weather is changing in volatility. And I think personally that we will also have to look at this nutrition impact on our produce when our temperatures are changing. So I hope that going forward with the Praia commitments, especially in the Praia 7 and 8, that we can keep having this dialogue between developers, investors, and of course researchers to promote and develop the data that can help decisions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Nicole Lefort.
Thanks. I'm Nicole Lefort. I am the director of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Small-Scale Irrigation, supported by USAID, which is led from the Borlaug Institute at Texas A&M. It's been a 10-year project with over 20 partners in more than 4 countries. And so through this project, I had the privilege of being part of the WASAG group on nutrition. So I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what Jenny said and then talk about finance and the business models. So through our project, we worked on nutrition-sensitive irrigation. Part of that was building the evidence base for what happens from small-scale irrigation to nutrition outcomes, and creating guidelines on how to better target irrigation investments to have better nutrition outcomes. So one of the next steps is really to take those guidelines that were really global and start to scale those down to national level. So it's working from that global level to national level. So it's really building on what Jenny said, so I don't need to repeat that. The other thing is, and I have to say that all of the 17 points are so relevant, it's really difficult to choose which one to speak to. But some of my personal work and some of the research that I've been doing under the Innovation Lab is looking at innovative finance and also building that into business models. So that's points 5 and 6, and it relates to point 15, which is farmer-led irrigation. So it's hard to pull those apart and figure out which one specifically you're speaking to because it's all integrated. So my emphasis today is to say that we really need to strengthen engagement and knowledge sharing on finance. And this can be done in the water sector, energy sector, food sectors, because we're learning a lot from the energy sector about finance. And it's important for us to gain a better understanding together on these different finance mechanisms, especially some of the instruments that are coming in that are considered innovative, carbon credits, green climate funds. We really need to start looking at how those cascade down and influence the last mile financial instruments to farmers at the farm level. The last panel of the day yesterday was hearing from farmers, and they were asked, what would you want to see in 5 years when you come back? And you know, what do you think the priority should be? And they were really talking about, how do you get down to the farm level? Well, we need to understand how things like green climate funds and these carbon credits and the results-based financing and these other mechanisms are really trickling down or cascading down to farmers so that we can provide some guardrails or even guidelines to ensure that there's accountability and to achieve some equitability in the benefits from those those different types of finance. So what I'm advocating for is really thinking through how do we link finance and innovation in finance down to sustainability and equitability. And so that's what I'd like to emphasize today. Thanks.
Daniel.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. My name is Daniel Tsegai. I'm a program officer at the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Maybe, I don't know how many of you know this convention. It is one of the conventions that was established at the Rio. It is a convention on desertification and also drought, and we are trying to support countries to combat desertification, land degradation, and drought. And I'm in charge of the drought and water scarcity portfolio. So our partnership with WASAG starts, I think, we are one of the co-founding partners for WASAG, Global Framework for Water Scarcity in Agriculture. And we believe this is a very important framework for cooperation because our entry point on this is drought. As I have been just tackling to, the drought is not a sector, it's a connector. So we need to make sure that there is collaboration between countries, north-south, south-south, but also between sectors. We have been supporting countries with about 70 countries. We are working on drought. And the business as usual approach so far has been being reactive. You just treat drought as a crisis. Then you just work on it in a more emergency relief mode, trying to recover, and then you just forget about it. And this is not going to be no longer a valid approach, and we're supporting countries now to come up with a principle of risk reduction. You need to have a policy. And there are 3 key pillars that we try to promote. One is monitoring and early warning systems. It's not about predicting and forecasting, it's also about communicating the risk and information and disseminating it to the end users. I was once in Ethiopia where the drought in Ethiopia in 2016 was very well predicted that it will come 8 months before because it was very much El Nino related. And the meteorology office knew about it, but they did not trickle it down to the farmers. And it was a disaster at that time. And they were able just trying to import crops from Kenya, putting about 800 million euros from that poor impoverished country. So this is not resilience, this is probably financial resilience or through aid. But FUSE was there, the Family Early Warning Systems Network. They were trying to provide this information and nothing has happened. So we need to make sure that we are just going to work with the farmers, and we need to make sure that everyone, stakeholders, are involved in the planning. So for us, I think it is important, this global framework for water scarcity in agriculture, and at the UNCCD, maybe we'll discuss it, we are trying to support countries to align. The government of Spain and Senegal now have established an alliance of about 30 countries, plus many UN organizations, an international drought resilience alliance, which I can elaborate maybe during the discussion, and we are a strong and passionate supporter of WASAG. Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Micah from USDS.
Good morning. Is coming through? Yes. Yes, Micah Rosenblum here. I'm agricultural project coordinator with USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Foreign Agricultural Service. I am located in our Office of Global Programs based in Washington, D.C. And I'll be happy to speak with any of you about USDA and the Foreign Agricultural Service and our toolbox of programs, which are pretty robust, we're a trade agency. Our programs range from market access and market development programs, export credits, international food assistance, international science exchanges and fellowships for faculty. We engage in capacity building projects with sister agencies in U.S. government, including the Agency for International Development and Department of State and others. And I'm quite happy to share with you and reiterate one of the announcements that the U.S. made at the UN 2023 Water Conference. Among the $49 billion commitment to domestic and global investments in water and sanitation, USDA committed to become and continue as a knowledge partner in WASAG. And there are several facets of the rationale behind that decision. And I think a lot of it has to do with the context of WASAG, and I will come to the assignment here, which was to pick some of the Praia commitments and discuss the significance of them and how we think we can approach it, and we're open-minded, it's evolving. But I want to come back to the whole context of WASAG and the importance of the fit and the need for that matter. Clearly, FAO is in a great position where they are right now to take this on because the context is climate change as an international, global imperative for all of us. The focus is on agriculture, which is inherently multi-sectoral. So the idea of FAO's scope, which is very similar to the U.S. Department of Agriculture scope, and having quite a range of equity and concern, and for that matter, expertise and information and data and tools and programs on water, because it is cross-cutting throughout the food and agriculture system and the forestry system. And I want to come back to forests because that might be one of our thoughts for the future here with respect to WASAG, and how more broadly how forests and land management in general contributes to the objectives of WASAG and food security. The third thing that I wanted to say about the context of WASAG is that it is a forum. It is an important, and I think growing in importance, becoming a forum for international cooperation, and not just international cooperation, which is critical for food and for climate and water, but it's because the food and agriculture sector itself is multi-sectoral, is inherently multi-sectoral. I always get a little chuckle, when I'm hearing the term the food and ag sector. And I think to myself, wow, there are so many sectors involved in the food and agriculture sector. So it's very exciting to us to have the kind of recognition and I'll say, a green light to fully engage in WASAG as it goes forward. We're really looking forward to that. And it's not just me speaking here as only the representative of the Foreign Agricultural Service. Really, throughout USDA, USDA is a large, complicated organization. We've got 29 different agencies and offices, and again, water is a consistent issue and concern throughout the department. So I'm standing before you today, but I'm literally, in this case, humbly representing a really large organization and a lot of potential to contribute. What are some of the general steps for USDA to be able to contribute to WASAG or even parallel or complementary initiatives for water security? Generally, we need to receive I'm out of time. I got to wrap up. Generally, we need to receive a request, proposal from a partner to engage, and the more specific, the better. We will, at that point, try to find whether or not USDA has the resources or has the expertise to be able to competently address the request. And thirdly, we absolutely need to have the concurrence internally within USDA and also with the American Embassy or embassies that are involved in those partner countries for us to engage in, what's being asked of us. Otherwise, just day to day and routinely, we're delivering our programs. Many of those programs have opportunities for collaboration, coordination that align with the objectives of WASAG. For example, one of our programs, our fellowship program, Scientific Exchange Fellowship Program, is supporting some of our fellows through that program are here at this conference. For example, it's not a water fellowship program. Climate smart agriculture is one of the priority themes there. So I'm out of time. I want to respect that. But I do just want to highlight here, I think the Praia Call to Action number 7, the idea of drawing the connections and sharing knowledge for proof of concept projects, bringing together food, nutrition, environment. There's a lot of potential there. As I mentioned earlier, I think that if there is scope to encompass the importance and contributions of forestry and broader land management beyond agriculture, but that also contributes to food and food security, that's an idea that I think we should continue to contemplate here, even within the context of WASAG. And the last thing that I will say is to the extent that as WASAG continues, that the monitoring, evaluation, and learning capacity of WASAG continues to evolve and develop, because really we were hearing throughout the days here about trust and about testimony and evidence, and I think really the more compelling the program is a direct result of the results, and what is the evidence that can be pointed to that it's worthwhile and making a difference. So I'll leave it at that, but glad to pick it up here with the others. Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. You can have a seat. Yes. So I did announce that one of our panelists was in another session, but he just arrived as Micah was talking, and it's my pleasure to introduce Tafadzwa from IMI. He's also the new leader of the WASAG Working Group on Sustainable Agriculture Water Use, and as I mentioned, he has got a special interest in indigenous crops, so we expect that will play a role also in that initiative. Tafadzwa, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and apologies for running a bit late. Greetings, everyone. I probably missed out on most of the conversations, so I might repeat what was said. But I come from my background. I'm a crop scientist, crop ecophysiologist, plant-water relations, then moved into crop modeling and a bit of hydrology, agrometeorology, then pretty much stayed in the water space. But I work a lot across the continuum from field crops management into the modeling of water use and climate change impacts on these crops, and into the space of food systems, how we mainstream these crops into food systems. I have a particular interest in underutilized indigenous and traditional crops, mostly because of the context that they represent, especially from an African perspective. A lot of these crops are drought tolerant, and they are nutrient dense, and they are fitted to marginal agricultural or production environments. Of course, they've had very little attention in terms of their breeding and improvement, so they are mostly low yielding, but they've got stable yields over time, and therefore offer better prospects under drought. So in some of the research that we have done, we have noted that the frequency of crop failure in these sort of crops is much lower under drought than for the hybrids and so forth. But there's still a case to develop and improve them. Now, I'm saying all of these things because it sort of feeds into what we want to bring into the working group. So I'm just coming from a session where we're talking about thinking beyond water. And one of the things that we want to bring in, and that builds on the last action item from Praia on the water, energy, food, environment nexus, is the fact that we're not just managing water for the sake of managing water. So it's not just sustainable agricultural water use for the sake of managing the water and reducing, water use, improving efficiencies, because it's about the people, it's about planet, it's about what are the priorities in the regions that we are working in. And in the regions that we are working in, the priorities relate to food security, they relate to malnutrition, they relate to rural economic development, they relate to job creation and wealth creation, they relate to addressing inequality and issues of equity. So when we are talking about sustainable agricultural water use, we have to look at it from a holistic perspective. And what we want to bring in to WASAG and with the other working groups is a better integration, so that we are not just managing water, alone in a silo, but we are managing it with other working groups. We are looking at the linkages between water, food, nutrition, and health. We are looking at the socio-economic aspects of it. We are looking at the business development models alongside it. We're looking at the renewable energy aspects of it from an irrigation perspective, solar-based irrigation. We are looking at the impact or implications of promoting farmer-led irrigation development in terms of access to nutrition and improving household incomes and what that means at a community level. So we really want to bring an integrated approach that sort of synergizes and catalyzes what we are doing in terms of managing water at a field and landscape level. And we will be focusing on the development of tools and approaches that facilitate this understanding of trade-offs across the different spaces and how we can really optimize the synergies to enhance multiple gains from field to landscape level. Thank you very much.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining here today. And please look how big, very big and beautiful is this table. So a round of applause, please, for them to come here to join us. And thank you to you to be here. It's almost lunchtime and it's the last day with the conference. Tomorrow we have the field trip. But thank you for joining and not being outside with this beautiful weather and beautiful campus, if I can be very honest. And yeah, we have listened so many important and good inputs from them, but of course it's a partnership, so for us it's very important any point of view from different backgrounds. So please, we don't have too much time unfortunately, but raise your hand, just stand up, I will give you the microphone and you can ask a question to any of them, but also make your comments. So who break the ice? Yes, thanks.
I'm by nature terribly shy, but I will ask you a question regardless. So I work with a group out of South Africa, and we use GIS science, Geographic Information System, and we deploy Hippo rollers, which have been around for 32 years. They're a 90-liter polyethylene drum with a stainless steel handle, so it effortlessly ports 24 gallons of water. So every day, 200 million hours a day, women and children port water in the world. So this is that microcosm, this is that first step. You have to plant a seed before you get acres of plants. So I would look to you guys to share your knowledge with me, and I will share it through GIS, how we can deploy more Hippo rollers, where we can help all of your alphabet soups to get in there as we do with the World Food Program and UNICEF. So I will absolutely share you the QR codes, but please think about first steps in water and those small little gardens everywhere in the world that a woman is attending to every day.
Thank you. So who wants to take it from the table? Oh yeah, so anyone, okay. So anyone else? Yes, thank you. Give me just a second to come.
My name is Binyam Eob. I work for the United States Agency for International Development, and my question is, what is the thought process now from WASAG on land tenure issues, especially in drought areas? Any kind of comments, feedback that you might have? Thanks.
Thank you. I don't know if Daniel want to take it. There should be another mic, so we don't have to.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you very much, Binyam, for this very interesting question. Land tenure is a big challenge, and this was also discussed by about 196 countries plus the European Union in 2019 in India Conference of Parties. We need to really solve the issue of land tenure. If you don't own your land, if you don't have a property right for your land, how can you talk about rehabilitating your land, because it's not your land? So I have good news for you, because countries have now agreed to include land tenure as a COP, as an UNCCD strategy, and they have agreed to also come up with a strategy on how to rehabilitate land and how to promote also land tenure. And this is one of our priorities now, to make sure that land rights and land tenure is in its proper place when it comes to rehabilitating land. And this has been discussed for many, many years, but at least they have come now into agreement only in 2019. So this is, at least from the policy side and from the negotiation side, it is now in the right direction. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Muri Agmolao from the African Union Commission. I'm just, I think it's a question, anybody can take it. I'm looking at it as a network like this, WASAG. What approach do you think would be feasible and very impactful to address issues of water scarcity in countries? What approach do you think WASAG can adopt to reach either policies and practice of agriculture in countries, especially in Africa, that how you can impart policies and practice of agriculture in addressing water scarcity? Just asking. Thank you.
That's a very good question. Yes.
Thank you very much. So firstly, we need to understand the drivers of water scarcity in the different areas and the type of water scarcity. So the issue of regional differentiation becomes important. In other places in Africa, we're dealing with physical water scarcity. There just isn't enough water resources. In other areas, we're dealing with economic water scarcity, which is, we don't have the infrastructure to distribute and supply water where it is needed. And those two scenarios call for different solutions. So understanding the drivers is part of it. Being able to monitor and measure our water resources is also important, because in a lot of instances, we are just not able, we don't have sufficient hydrometeorological information to actually quantify the state of water resources. So that is two. Understanding the vulnerability of the people within the areas that are prone to water scarcity and their ability to cope or adapt to water scarcity becomes very important in developing tailored solutions for them. So that would be step 3 for me. And then once we've got that baseline of, what are the drivers, what type of water scarcity is there, who is vulnerable, what are their capacities, and then we can get to the part where we develop the mitigation strategies. So how do we mitigate these scarcities? Is it an infrastructure solution? Is it about increasing access to irrigation? Is it about managing water better in rain-fed systems? And dare I say that we talk a lot about irrigation, but the majority of agriculture, especially in Africa, is still rain-fed and will continue to be rain-fed for the foreseeable future. So how do we manage that space? And that's also where the risk mostly is in terms of climate change. What sort of crops do we need to bring into drought-tolerant crops? How do we diversify these systems? A lot of them are mixed farming systems, so people are not just doing crops, they're also doing livestock. So how do we diversify these systems? But that's now in the mitigation space, once we've got the baseline understanding sorted out.
Yes, there are more hands. Yeah, you can use the mic. Then Johnny, then Vinay.
Sorry, I was not paying attention here across, but I'll be very, very brief to also just take an angle on your good question. From our perspective, we like the approach that WASAG has adopted, that it's convening, it's utilizing FAO's competency to convene across sectors and across borders and have these discussions to make it possible, to make it convenient to learn from one another and to discover solutions together. But mostly I think that as an approach, that it's institutionalizing a framework and providing a convening forum that's predictable and relatively convenient for stakeholders to approach and engage. So I will yield now.
Thank you. Gianni?
Yeah, I realize it's lunchtime, so I just wanted to continue on that. I totally agree that WASAG's strength is at convening or creating a diverse community of practice for dialogue and sharing and learning. And if WASAG discussions or products that are being done, for example, our working group contributed to input into the UN Food System Summit with a very diverse set of authors. We have convened sessions with a very diverse set of panelists, and this is a power that we can do in WASAG that we can't do in other spaces. And I would hope that WASAG will have a space, for example, when FAO members convene in July, if WASAG there could tell the member representatives of FAO when they convene every year that what WASAG is trying to achieve, because I think then it feeds back to the national level on the value of WASAG. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianni. Marco?
Yes, very quickly, just to add what Gianni was saying. I think it has briefly commented by Gianni. I think that the most important approach is that WASAG will or might become like Commission of Agriculture of FAO, might become an organ like Commission on Water Scarcity. And this is, I think, what FAO is working on. Having all the countries committed and being part of WASAG. I think that's the most important approach we can think of, because that's the case when we can have political level, we can talk to them. I think we have been doing a great work from the technical point of view. We have been raising awareness, we know what is the problem, possible solutions, so on. But now, this is the moment, as I said before, we have to talk to the political level. And I'm sure that this kind of approach, having all of the countries, I think replication of Commission on Agriculture or FAO in Commission on Water Scarcity, like an organ, could be the point to reach and to strive for. Thank you.
Vinay?
I just want to add, what WASAG is doing is generating evidence-based to make a compelling case that these are the solutions. Like we were saying, there'll be a compendium that will be produced, a best management practices, and they look at the situation of the end user. We also have to connect with the decision maker or the politician who's trying to decide on investing in these. So if we can provide practice brief, policy briefs,
and talk about the KPIs that are important for the decision maker. Does it create jobs? Does it do carbon sequestration? Does it prevent migration? Does it bring income increase? What exactly are the co-benefits? Because water typically in developing countries, dry areas, is quite cheap. Although it's scarce, it's not a big part of the equation when you look at the cost-benefit analysis. So farmer is not inclined towards saving water unless it's physically scarce. What farmer cares for is if you can tell him, if you adopt what I'm telling you to do, you will be making higher profits at the end of the day. Your input costs will go down and your profits will increase. That's how you engage with him. And that's how you have to look at the situation from the end user's perspective and tailor your message according to what they want to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you, Vinay. Any other last statement from you? Because I don't know if we have time. We don't have time for other questions. So from the panel, if anyone want to say last statement? No. Oh. Yeah, no, sure. Looking to lunch. Okay, so thank you so much to all the panelists. Thank you so much to you to join it. Wait, it's not finished. Huh? We have still the closing remarks before lunch. So let me just say thank you. And as we are in the US and we know how sport is important, right? And I'm not an expert of baseball or football, but I know that each team has different players with different roles. So this is our team. They are all champions, as we said this time. And so let's win the game against water scarcity together, right? Okay, thank you so much. And the floor to Jean.
And I'll just invite Peter to close.
No pressure here from Jenny. She's ready for her lunch, obviously. Well, thank you all. Again, sorry, I really was... So many colleagues that are here that I wanted to interact with. I've tried to speak to as many as I can, but it's been a bit of a challenge. But I want to thank Jean and Rosaida. When you showed that video, apart from that clip in there with me in it, which you didn't get the rights to do that, but anyway... I really appreciate the way you've pulled that all together and the messaging around that. That's really strong and powerful. It is a journey. This is definitely making sausage. It has all kinds of pieces we're trying to put together, but I really do see this as progress. And as you can tell, I'm a big fan of WASAG. I think it's an important piece. As I was looking through the priorities, when we kind of finished doing this in Praia, you come away with these priorities and you kind of went, huh? Some of them you were not quite sure how they all fitted, but then after reflecting on it for 2 or 3 months and seeing them again, you go, okay, we really do capture a lot of the pieces in there. The two ones I want to emphasize, and those who know me will have heard this before, the farmer-led piece. Not so much, I think that is an opportunity for WASAG to really engage there because many of us here are involved in that kind of initiative, but I think more importantly is to bring attention to, like we tried to do with the panel at the end of the day yesterday, that really ultimately, when we talk about food security, the farmers are, they are the engine that make this work and they're the stewards of the land and they're the ones that we have to embrace and help. And just to make this difficult for myself, I'll say the other one that I want to emphasize is the political agenda, because I think that's been very relevant for the motivation of forming WASAG. How do we get, as it was with Beth Ford, it was the voice into the political area, because these are two massive challenges, water security and food security. Yet, the people working in that interface is actually, the farmers that are working in that interface, there's millions of them around the world, but the people actually trying to influence and work on this at the regional and global level are very few. And it's amazing we've got so many of the people working in that space here, but we're very few. So the real opportunity there for me was how can we use this group to help amplify it through the likes of FAO to really get some of these issues much higher up the agenda in the water sector, but also in the agricultural sector. And that's, I think, something we've done. I think there's a new opportunity now with the way WASAG is looking at re-emphasizing with the governments involved. I think it's fabulous what USDA, FAS is now really committing to WASAG. That's an important, because if you then let's see the ambassador from Switzerland and his commitment around this, he's very clear thinking on that, and I think that's really where we're making progress there. I will caution this with, I think one of the issues we also have is we come at it all from different facets, different contexts. And we end up these discussions, is it rain-fed or irrigated? Is it the other kind of continuum that I'm hearing is well, it's the equity surplus piece, surplus productivity, equity, poverty reduction, the safety net. And often it's both. In India, that they really addressed the poverty piece around, but they also produced a surplus so they could feed the urban population. And when I hear that we tend to get down into only the equity, social safety net part of what we try to do, I worry. When I hear 2 billion people in sub-Saharan Africa by 2050, that's scary. When then I hear someone say yesterday 4 billion people by the end of the century, to feed that population, it's not going to come from Nebraska. It's got to come from Africa. So how do we do that? So basically, the points I was hearing, I concur with nearly everything that was said on this table, and those I didn't agree with, I'll take it up with them later. But anyway, I think we do need to acknowledge our differences in this group, but understand collectively what we can do together. We should amplify our voices, really engage in this political process. I don't mean advocacy. I think there's others can do that, but it's really how do we take this messaging forward. And I think WASAG, the Secretariat, is really hit its stride in that space and doing that messaging. But we need to get the farmers to the tables. We need their voices in these conversations. And we can have panels, and often it's very difficult to get small-scale farmers. Who represents them? But we really need to work on that challenge. With that, I'm thinking, where are the tables we need to get them to? And that's why I'm kind of emphasizing the World Water Forum in Indonesia in 2024. I think WASAG needs to take the lead on that. I would even challenge that we think about maybe a water and food pavilion in Bali, something very tangible where we can meet. We had the nature pavilion at the last World Water Forum, and it was very useful, but the nature piece is important, but I think water scarcity, water and agriculture needs to be thinking about something like that. And perhaps trying to convene a high-level panel on this topic at the same time. But I'm just using that as an example because I think we've got the COPs. In the climate change conversations, we've got a water pavilion and we've got an agricultural pavilion. Great progress in 10 years to get those voices heard. Where's water and agriculture? And we've got people getting pulled between the two. But how do we bring those pieces together? So again, we've siloed those two big sectors. We're the people we're the tiny piece in the middle trying to pull those silos together. As you can tell, I'm pretty enthusiastic about this. I'm really glad you all could come here and have this conversation. But what I really appreciate is seeing all these commitments to the working groups. We've got engagement in some of them, but we can't be in all. But all those commitments, and now also the commitments for others to embrace this challenge. Again, thank you for coming. Enjoy your lunch, Jenny, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.